5 minutes from now, this team will save thousands of lives. Under no circumstances does this briefcase leave the area, or it's war.
He's on his way.
Good or bad, when you work for the agency,
All teams in position.
it becomes your whole life.
In this movie, we have the albino, we have the wolf. On the issue of code names, I'm curious, if you could choose your own code name for your life, what would it be?
Oh, man. Do you understand I make cowboy movies and you're just asking me to do some sophisticated thing like come up with a code? I can't do it. I don't have that covered. Would you cover that for me, please?
I will definitely try.
When
See,
you-
I was thinking for myself, like I could be maybe the Inquisitor.
Really?
Or
That's not
since
strong enough.
Or since the last name is Devi, I could be the Deviator.
That's weak.
Weak.
So we gotta use something.
Okay.
They could call you the deviant for short.
Exactly, which
So
would
that's-
totally
you have
undermine
to,
me.
You have to understand what people will do with your nickname.
It can be dangerous.
It can be
I
really
agree.
dangerous.
I agree. Now, this movie, there's so much going on. This is not a very easily classifiable film. You can't say, this is a spy movie, this is this. So how do you describe it to people?
I don't know. Sometimes a movie, you just want it to be a ride. It's like you want to sit down, the curtain opens, well, the curtain doesn't open anymore these days, and that you go on a ride, and that a character that you see has a certain set of skills is completely rendered useless when he runs into women at a certain point. He just doesn't deal with it very well, and you see him try, and he's a trier. He really does try, and then between the raindrops of trying to patch his life back together, he has to go dispatch some people, and he's really good at that. And sometimes it even gets interrupted, and he's willing to kind of take his father and take a call before he does his action. So it's kind of unique. It's very American that way.
And this movie made me think about the similarities between the life of a successful actor and a spy. You are, have to pick up sometimes, go to exotic lands.
Right.
Sometimes you can't tell your family what you're doing. You have to sometimes miss familial obligations because you're on set. Do you ever think of yourself as like a storytelling spy?
No, but it is a nomadic life, and the people that actually make movies even much more so than me, because being in movies has afforded me an opportunity to not make movies too, take time off. But I think of the crew who, in 3 weeks or 3 months, will have their suitcases packed and they'll be somewhere else in the world. I have been able to travel this world. I've been able to do things that I never thought were possible when I was struggling in college to think what I might do. Had I gone the traditional path, I never would have been able to see or meet the people that I have in my life. And that was because somehow I got lucky and I found what my love was.
And now, working with McG, I'm curious, were you nervous at all about being asked to do like a flying flip kick off the back of a mechanical yak at some point?
No, I think McG has a very good understanding of me and what I have always done, and subtly knew things that I could probably do for him. So I think he was a good manager of what my skills were.
And the relationship that your character has with his daughter, I think it's so interesting, those developmental points he manages to hit with her, even though he missed them at the appropriate time for her. Could you talk a little bit about those?
It doesn't start off easy, nor should it. And he's humiliated. He's humiliated because he doesn't even understand how to actually buy a gift that's appropriate. And he has missteps, and we like him more for that. And she doesn't cut him any slack, and we like her for that. Could you get rid of that annoying cough? She has no idea what's happening to him. But so we get to somehow see this growth, and if it was too fast, he saves her in a critical way, and then has an absolute conversation with her that ends with him saying, "You're not wearing that to school." He begins to get traction. At first, and there's a humor that comes out of that without reaching for it.
To end on a serious note, is it never too late to make that effort to really connect with your kid?
Well, I think in the absence of love, nothing is worth fighting for. And I think that you can be bruised really badly in your life. You can feel like you're the person that's always building the bridge back, and that gets tiring if you're always the person. But love, when love's your guide, you almost are willing to take another blow just to try to mend something. Yeah, it's heroic to be able to do that when it's thrown back in your face. Who would want to return for that? But You know, I think that, you know, people sometimes, when they're at their biggest odds, need to just rush together and say, what have we been doing, man? We've been wasting so much time.
Congratulations on the film. Saw it last night. What an exciting part for you to be playing. You get to do some pretty badass stuff. What kind of stands out in your mind when you think back to the film?
Well, the one thing I I can't quite forget is it's cold. I wore, latex dresses and corsets and heels and latex the whole movie, and it was the dead of winter in Paris. It was freezing. I spent the whole movie miserable and cold. So that's kind of had an impact on me.
What a great memory.
Yeah.
That's kind of fantastic.
Oh, and it was fun. But but I remember being cold.
Well, now, one thing I've always wanted to ask an actress who's played a part like this, how feasible is it to kick ass wearing heels that are about that tall?
Well, I handle it in most of my movies, I think. It's an art. I'm mastering it one film at a time, I think.
But now, if you ever had to go into battle in real life, you'd go flats, right?
Well, I mean, it depends on the rest of the wardrobe. You know, you can't really always plan an outfit around the shoes, as you know.
Yes, clearly.
No, but that's kind of why I like these characters. I'm drawn to the characters that are, they're still women. They're still, they're still women. You know, they're not wearing maybe camos or pantsuits, but they're strong nonetheless. They're active. They're at times violent, but I'm drawn to these characters. I'm drawn to Vivi because she isn't defined by her sexuality, but she also doesn't make apologies for it. And I like that. She's just unapologetically her. And no one has more fun than Vivi in this movie. And I really like that about her. Only I'd had warmer clothes.
Well, that brings me to my next question of the obvious sequel question. We know that Kevin doesn't really do sequels, but I've really got the feeling, especially by the end of the film, that maybe there's a Vivi sequel to be had.
Oh.
Maybe someplace tropical, so you're not freezing.
I think if there was to be a sequel, I would highly recommend it be somewhere around the equator.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Maybe 3 days to kill in the Caribbean, maybe. I could see that.
Is it something you would do again? Is it a character you'd like to revisit?
No, and in my career, I have thus far avoided revisiting a character, which maybe that will change in the future. For me, when I walk away at rap, I put on a different hat and have to bury that character, and that can be sometimes hard, sometimes it's wonderful, but in general, I don't know if I can learn more from that character on the second go-round. But who's to say? It's I don't know what's going to happen in the future.
Well, and before we wrap up, I want to ask. In this movie, we have the wolf, we have the albino. So, in terms of code names, if you could give yourself your own code name for your life, what would your code name be?
Ooh, my code name for my life?
Yeah.
What about the nerd?
The nerd.
I like that.
They would never suspect it was you.
Or would they?
That's brilliant. Wow, good on you.
See?
And
all my work as an assassin spy has helped me.
You did a shot of the Eiffel Tower with the carousel kind of in the foreground.
Correct.
And it was a way of seeing the Eiffel Tower that I don't think I've ever seen before.
Well, that's certainly the intention, was to use Paris as a character.
Mm-hmm.
And Alfred Hitchcock once said, if you're shooting in Holland, shoot tulips and windmills. So don't fight City Hall, man. I mean, you got to go with the beauty of the city and treat it as a character. And it's also right for what Costner's character of Ethan was experiencing. He's a fish out of water. He's not in his natural environment. You see Kevin, you see Americana. So to see that energy in France it puts you off balance, and that's the story of what he's going through in the film. He's a little off balance. He's trying to reconnect with his daughter. He's making his mistakes. He's making his effort. He's got a heart of gold, and he's trying his best. And the city being a strange place is an important factor, and beautiful.
And somehow, though, you manage to make it look like, of course we know it, but you make it look new because you're showing it in a way that hasn't been shown. It's like, can you possibly find a way to shoot the Empire State Building or the Statue of Liberty that hasn't been done before? And you managed to, which I think is great.
Well, that's interesting you say that, because the crew was French, okay? Naturally, Luc Besson's one of the great French filmmakers, and he wrote the script, and everybody there knows Paris inside and out. And he would talk about how my bringing an American eye to Paris sees it more fresh. You see it for not necessarily the first time, but in a different way. Just as if Luke were to photograph New York, he would see it differently as well. Because we're all like, okay, I got it, you know, the Chrysler Building, Empire State Building, but to someone who's from France, it's got a special magic and allure, and it's new, and you can therefore bring that to your photography, and I tried to do that to Paris.
This movie is not one thing or the other. You can't just say, well, this is an action film, well, this is a spy film. There's a lot going on. So when you describe it to people, you know, because everything in Hollywood, you gotta get that, you know, 30-second soundbite. How do you describe this movie?
Well, I try to fight against that 30-second soundbite. You're right, you gotta describe it and put it in a box, but I try to stay away from the boxes. This film, I'm hoping, is original in that it balances action, certainly, and humor, but most particularly character and a good story and a guy who's learning what matters most in life. And what I always try to do is I ask the question, what's it remind you of? And if I see that people are stumped for a moment, I've done my job well. Because, yeah, sure, there's a component of Taken, and there's a component of James Bond, and there's a component of, you know, a great many things. But at the end of the day, if you can't draw a direct correlation to any film in particular, I'm very, very pleased. And it's the privilege of the audience to like it or not like it, but at least I've honored the audience by giving them something original that's character-based and hopefully a tour de force on behalf of Kevin Costner.
This movie really made me kind of think of the similarity between the life of a successful filmmaker and the life of a spy. You guys are in similar situations often. You pick up and you go to, you know, foreign lands for a long periods of time. Sometimes you can't talk about it with your families. Sometimes you maybe have to call in familial, you know, birthday songs or stuff. Do you see yourself as a bit of a storytelling spy?
It's interesting to hear you put it that way, but I definitely see myself as a personal failure in regard to I've spent too much time in the field and too much time working. I mean, I come from a culture where my parents got married at 18, and, you know, now I'm 32 years old and I'm still unmarried. 32. And, you know, it's interesting. I'm well past 32 and I'm not married, and I just, you know, I look at it, I say, what happened? But, you know, on a serious note, it does speak to your point. You kind of go on these movie camp trips for 18 months at a time, and life keeps passing you by, and that is a theme of the picture. So, you know, I did bring some personal experience with that and trying to find balance between your work life and your personal life.
You said there'd be one guy, not five. You might want to ride home.
Did you hear that?
The spares was in the trunk. Hey, I'm trying to have a conversation with my daughter. I'm sorry, sweetie. Now, where were we?